You're going down, Toretto.
I'm right here.
One man was the soul of the Fast family, the other a billion-dollar box office machine. When these two action giants stood shoulder to shoulder, the world erupted in cheers. But when they turned their backs on each other, the silence was deafening. Vin Diesel. A voice like a roaring V8, a face carved from steel, hardened by every deadly turn. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, a towering force of muscle with $1 million smile that could shatter box office records. They once roared out of the smoke together, shoulder to shoulder like twin engines, fired by trust and adrenaline. But then, a single Instagram post sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Some male co-stars are unprofessional, not trying hard. Candy asses. No names were mentioned, but everyone heard the screeching tires tearing through the heart of the Fast and Furious family. From that moment on, they never shared the screen again. No greetings, no joint scenes. Suppléaps. Invitations laced with thorns. What really happened between Vin and The Rock? Who fractured the family? And how did two men who once made the world believe in brotherhood become two stars who couldn't even look each other in the eye? The real-life feud between Dominic Toretto and Luke Hobbs was just beginning, and it was more explosive than any car chase the franchise had ever seen. When friendship begins with passion, by 2010, the Fast and Furious franchise was running on fumes. After 4 installments, audiences had grown weary of recycled street races, paper-thin plots, and a Vin Diesel all too familiar as Dominic Toretto, the man who lived by one mantra: family is everything. Universal wanted something new, a fresh force, a character strong enough to stand toe-to-toe with Dom himself. And that is when Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson entered the picture. The role of Agent Luke Hobbs was not originally meant for him. The first choice was Tommy Lee Jones, a classic face in the world of action films. But it was Vin Diesel who suggested the name The Rock on social media, and fans immediately rallied behind it. Vin simply said, "I wanted something wilder, more muscular." Dwayne was the audience's choice, and I listened. Dwayne was not just a fan favorite, he was a box office beast. After hits like Journey 2, Tooth Fairy, and The Scorpion King, he was ready to join a franchise on shaky ground. He wasn't afraid to step into the shadow of a legend, and for Vin Diesel, that at first might have been a welcome relief. Their first scene together was shot on the streets of Rio de Janeiro, Fast 5. One man was the soul of the Fast family, with eyes always burning on the edge of rage. The other, a towering force of muscle and charm, like he'd walked straight out of a comic book. From their very first face-off, they fit like gasoline and fire. After the shoot, Vin posted a photo of them together with the caption, "Welcoming my new brother into the Fast family." The Rock called Vin a respected elder, the man who gave him the chance to be part of a legend. Fast 5 was a massive success. It grossed $626 million, becoming the first installment to elevate Fast and Furious from street action series to global mega franchise. The Rock was hailed in the press as franchise Viagra, the man who revived fading film series. Vin Diesel nodded in pride. He knew he had made the right choice. When everything was finally clicking into place, when the world was falling in love with these two heroes standing side by side, they had no idea that in that very first handshake, a tiny crack had already formed. And that crack would grow with every million they earned, every unspoken glance of rivalry they failed to acknowledge. On screen, they were family. Off screen, it was a cold battlefield. The most intense moment in Fast 5 wasn't scripted, and it never made it into the trailer. There were no gunshots, no drifts, no rooftops collapsing, only glances. A quiet look between two men. A single step away from the set that felt as heavy as lead. By the time the 6th and 7th installments were in production, the mood on set had changed in a way no one wanted to name. Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson were no longer joking between takes. No more handshakes like steel. No more selfies posted with brotherly captions. In their place was silence. not the comfortable silence of close friends who understand each other, but the kind of silence that makes everyone around hold their breath. Then whispers from the crew started to leak. Vin Diesel often arrived late to set. He would sometimes change his lines or stretch out scenes just to maintain control. To Vin, that was the privilege of the man who built the Fast legacy. To Dwayne, it was unprofessional. The problem was not just punctuality. It was pride. The Rock was known for being hard on himself. He was always the first to arrive, the last to leave. He believed that if he wanted to lead, he had to set the example. That difference in discipline became a distance, unspoken, but growing wider with every call of action. Then it exploded. In 2016, during the final days of shooting The Fate of the Furious, Dwayne posted a caption on Instagram that shook Hollywood. Some male co-stars are true professionals. Others, candy asses. I cannot stand it anymore. Audiences deserve the truth. No name was mentioned, but everyone knew the message was aimed at Vin Diesel. The phrase candy ass was no accident. In the language of wrestling where Dwayne was raised, it is a soft insult for someone weak, someone unworthy of sharing the ring. In other words, it was a slap. Vin stayed silent. No denial, no clarification, not a single line of response. But it was that very silence that made everything even more clear. The film set turned into a battlefield. The crew had to rearrange the schedule. Scenes with Vin and Dwayne were shot separately, then edited together in post-production. In the film, Dominic and Hobbs still spoke, still worked together, still called each other with that special bond the Fast saga is known for. But in real life, they no longer spoke. And if you look closely, you will notice it. Hobbs's eyes no longer feel warm. Dom's voice no longer sounds heartfelt. The two heroes, two names that once set theaters on fire, now orbit each other like frozen planets, never touching again. Fast and Furious is a series about family, but from that moment, that family began to crack, not because of speed, not because of enemies, but because of the brothers themselves in a power game behind the lens. And that was only the first fracture. When the media becomes the battlefield and words become live ammunition, if backstage tension was a dormant volcano, then the media was where it began to erupt. After that Instagram post, Dwayne Johnson went silent. He gave no explanations, did not delete the post, did not apologize. He simply left the question hanging in the air, and that made everything more dangerous. Because when a strong man says nothing, people begin speaking for him. The media rushed in, articles with titles like, "Who is the candy ass in Fast and Furious? Is Vin Diesel really a tyrant on set? Fans must choose The Rock or Dom Toretto." Each question was a tiny cut to the image. And repeated cuts over time can tear down even the strongest symbol, even the symbol of family. Meanwhile, Dwayne kept rising. He took on solo projects like Jumanji, Moana, Rampage. He smiled on red carpets. He was dubbed the most beloved man in Hollywood. And he became a symbol of professionalism, of the American work ethic, of unstoppable energy. And Vin chose mystery. He said nothing. He didn't strike back. He kept a cold, composed face, as if everything was part of the plan. But the audience was not naive. They started taking sides. One side said The Rock was being disrespectful to the man who brought him into the franchise. The other said it was Vin Diesel who couldn't accept someone else shining brighter than him in his own world. The divide spilled outside the cinema. On social media, Fast fan pages split into two camps. Communities shared behind-the-scenes clips, analyzed glances, awkward smiles. They created memes, photo edits, full relationship timelines. It was as if the whole world was watching an undocumented divorce between two action kings. But Vin Diesel would not back down. Months later, he finally responded, not with rage, but with a call for peace. In a post, Vin shared an old photo of Dom and Hobbs and wrote, "Little brother, it's time to come home. We have unfinished business, unfinished legacies. Audiences deserve the ending they've been waiting for." The tone was soft, almost touching, but to Dwayne, it was an attack wrapped in diplomacy. In an interview not long after, when asked about Vin's post, Dwayne smiled, a thin, razor-edged smile. "I had spoken with Vin before that. I made it clear I would not return." For him to post that was a manipulation tactic. I don't like being emotionally manipulated, especially in public. No shouting, no anger, but every word was ice cold. So cold the room fell silent. This was no longer disagreement. This was war. A war without bullets, but with millions of viewers. No bloodshed, but very real wounds. And what hurt most was that it all started from friendship. A friendship once admired by the world, now turned into a duel of microphones, of social media, of smiles no longer reaching the eyes. And in the end, people realized, in Hollywood, no one is truly untouchable. Not even Dom Toretto. Not even The Rock. And one man takes a different path, and a franchise begins to crack. The fracture between Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson was no longer just about icy glances on set or passive-aggressive posts. It began to seep into the very core of the franchise itself. When The Fate of the Furious hit theaters, something felt different. Hobbs, Dwayne's character, was no longer as present. No more scenes standing beside Dom. No more intense exchanges between two men who once made audiences cheer. And then the announcement came. Universal revealed a spin-off, Hobbs and Shaw, featuring two of the franchise's most beloved characters, Dwayne Johnson as Luke Hobbs, Jason Statham as Deckard Shaw. No Vin Diesel, no Dominic Toretto, no family. For the first time in Fast and Furious history, a major installment would not include the man who helped build the brand. The news struck like thunder in an already stormy sky. Fans were stunned. The press was shaken. Vin Diesel stayed silent. And that was the moment the quiet feud became an open competition. Finn understood clearly, if Hobbs and Shaw became a massive success, it would prove something dangerous. That Fast and Furious could survive without Vin Diesel. That the world might love The Rock more than Dominic Toretto. In interviews, Vin maintained composure. He offered congratulations. He said he was proud of what the franchise had achieved. He emphasized that every character deserved their moment to shine. But deep down, everyone knew. A father doesn't easily watch the child he raised be taken on an adventure without him. On the other side, Dwayne was full of energy. He posted behind-the-scenes photos with Jason. He thanked fans, spoke of his new family. And in one interview, when asked if he was still part of the Fast and Furious franchise, he answered simply, "I'm telling my own story." Hobbs and Shaw premiered in 2019. It earned over $750 million worldwide, a massive hit. And it made the world ask, does Fast and Furious really need Vin Diesel? Finn's response didn't come in words. It came as a strategic move. He and his team fast-tracked the next Fast film, this time with the original cast and without The Rock. The message was clear. The Fast family does not need Hobbs. The media battle had now become a box office war, and the audience became the voters. They went to theaters, not just for the action. They went to pick a side. This split turned the franchise into two paths. One clung to the spirit of family, with Vin Diesel at the center. The other embraced muscular action and sharp humor, with The Rock and Jason Statham forging a new kind of brotherhood bold, edgy, and modern. And between these two paths stood millions of fans who no longer knew where the true heart of Fast and Furious lay. A franchise that once felt unified now resembled a car torn in half from a crash at 200 miles per hour. Each half could still move, but the soul they once shared was gone.
Hey, Dwayne.
It seems like Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson are
When a call for peace becomes the final showdown. In 2021, while the pandemic was still lingering, an unexpected post from Vin Diesel appeared on Instagram. It wasn't to promote a film. It wasn't a gym selfie. It was a message to an old brother. The photo showed Dom and Hobbs locking eyes in Fast Five. Their gazes were intense, but the caption came in a softer tone. Vin wrote, "My little brother Dwayne, the time has come. The world awaits the finale of Fast. We need you back. No one else can play Hobbs." Every word was chosen carefully. Every pause measured to stir emotion. Vin referenced a promise to Paul Walker. He spoke of a vow to give the franchise a proper ending. He reminded everyone of the millions of fans waiting for the family to reunite. On the surface, it sounded like a heartfelt invitation. But underneath was a message loaded with pressure. This time, Dwayne Johnson didn't stay silent. He responded not with a post, but in an official interview. And this time, his words cut sharper than any blade. "I had already spoken with Vin in private. I was very clear that I wouldn't return. He still went ahead and posted that. I saw that as emotional manipulation, especially bringing Paul's name into it." Dwayne wasn't angry, but his words slammed the door shut. There would be no more meetings, no public reconciliation, no hug on the red carpet. Only one truth remained. Dom and Hobbs, in real life, had reached a crossroad with no way back. To the media, Vin Diesel's call had failed. But to fans, it made the story even more heartbreaking. Because even after all the years, all the back and forth, people still wanted to believe that Brotherhood on screen could be healed with a real handshake. But Hollywood is not a movie. Real feelings aren't lit with stage lights. And when a fracture runs too deep, no scene can patch it up. A franchise born from speed and loyalty had now become a cautionary tale of how pride and power can kill everything. When the price of division is not just loss, but an emptiness in the hearts of the audience. After all the noise, the post, the rebuttals, and the sidelong glances on set, Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson are no longer at odds because they are no longer walking the same path. Vin continued to lead Fast and Furious, guiding the franchise into its 9th, then 10th installment, and finally splitting it into a 2-part finale. He kept the role of Dominic Toretto as an irreplaceable symbol, but the audience knew something was gone. Not the action sequences, not the explosive effects, but the very thing that once made Fast feel special, the connection between characters. When Hobbs was gone, the handshake between two titans vanished. When Hobbs was gone, so did The Rock's gravelly, charming laugh that used to cut through the tension. Fast became hollow, not because of a missing role, but because of missing emotion. The audience felt it, and the box office echoed it. Fast 9 still drew crowds, still won big overseas, but what viewers carried out of the theater wasn't a rush of adrenaline, it was regret. Meanwhile, Dwayne Johnson continued to dominate the box office with his solo ventures. He became the blueprint of a modern-day superstar. But whenever Fast came up in interviews, his eyes would dim. His answers always held a pause. Because no matter how strong a man is, he knows some doors, once closed, stay on the far side of the past. Then in 2023, a surprising update surfaced. Dwayne Johnson returned to Fast, appearing in the after credits of Part 10. Just a few seconds. No major lines, but enough to ignite a question among fans. Had the feud ended, Dwayne answered in an interview, "Vin and I had a deep conversation, man to man. No media, no social networks, just honesty. No one knows what was said. No one knows who apologized. No one knows if this was reconciliation or just a nod for the sake of the brand." But that moment, that blink between light and shadow, was enough to stir one thing in the hearts of fans. Something they had wished for all these years. Not victory, not revenue, not whose name tops the poster, but a hug, forgiveness, a family. Some cracks don't need to be fixed. They just need to be heard. In the world of Fast and Furious, speed is everything. But after nearly 2 decades, what keeps people watching isn't the drifts, the explosions, or the cars flying off cliffs. It's a promise. A promise that no matter what happens, family always comes first. But in real life, when the lights go off and the cameras stop rolling, we come to a painful realization. Family, whether by blood or by choice, can still fall apart. Not because there's not enough love, but because there's too much ego. Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson are not villains. They are 2 men of stature, with their own values, histories, and very different ways of loving their work. They're 2 engines built to conquer the racetrack, but not always on the same path. Their story isn't about conflict. It's about how we deal with disagreement, how not to turn differences into battles, how to stand tall and still remain humble, how to know when to step forward and when to step back. As viewers, we can admire the breathtaking action. But what stays with us longer are the glances that no longer meet, the forced smiles behind the scenes, the silence between 2 men who once called each other brother. When the biggest action franchise in the world can't keep 2 men together, we realize something. Fame, money, and success, they're never enough. The only thing that can truly hold a relationship together is honesty, respect, and the willingness to take a step toward each other. And if there's one thing the audience should take away from this separation, it's the message that Fast and Furious has whispered for more than 20 years. There is no race more important than the one with the person sitting right beside you.